Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Ladies and gentlemen, the Hyperconscious Podcast is proudly sponsored by our friend and mentor, David Meltzer of the Playbook Podcast. He was kind enough to join us on episode 144 and 135.
Folks, it has become Kevin and I's mission in life to help you realize that the life of your dreams is right on the other side of you becoming the greatest version of yourself. Let us help you do that.
I rarely do these things twice in such a short amount of time, but you guys impress me. I believe in people that provide value and of our service. You two guys are on your way to huge fulfillment, purpose, and profitability, and I'm looking forward to helping you both.
We appreciate that more than you know. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode where Alan and I sat down and talked about the importance of creating one habit at a time. Today, for episode number 252, we are going to do a small talks episode on the word judgment.
So I just pulled up the definition. I should probably talk into the mic.
Yes,
huh?
that would help.
I just pulled up the definition. But before we jump into judgment and why it's not always a bad thing, but it is sometimes a bad thing, and we're going to figure out when and which and where.
Yes, yep.
I want you to go to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com, click on join, hashtag hyperconsciousnation. Folks, we just went live earlier today to talk about what it's like when you achieve your dreams, even though all the naysayers did say we couldn't do that.
What the hell is wrong with you?
Oh, it's a good
So
mood.
I literally showed the check that we received from our last speech and said at one point this was just a dream and not everybody believed in that dream. So if you believe in your dream, then you should chase it because that's the only way you're going to get the result. And speaking of speaking, if you are looking to inspire, motivate, and break some things free and loose in a crowd or an audience, Alan and myself would love to be the ones to do that, whether it's what am I trying to say?
Clarity or confidence?
No.
No.
Not a business. What's the other word?
Oh, organization?
Organization.
Yes.
I can never think of that. Whether it's an
Charity,
organization,
nonprofit.
all of those things.
Right.
Anywhere where you're looking for speakers, we would love to be that. Let's talk a little bit about judgment because I'm
Folks.
judging myself right now.
Oh, yeah. This has been... We apologize in advance
We just
for
got
this
off another
horrible
podcast,
opening.
so
It was fire with Matt Staver. Shout out. When is that dropping? 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Up to 2 weeks.
Up to 2 weeks.
All right, folks. Judgment. Here are a few definitions of the word judgment. Number 1, an act or instance of judging. Makes sense. Number 2, the ability to judge, make a decision, or form an opinion objectively, authoritatively, and wisely, especially in matters affecting action, good sense, and discretion. I like that definition a lot.
Wow.
That's fire. Number 3, the demonstration or exercise of such ability or capacity. Interesting. The forming of an opinion, estimate, notion, or conclusion as from circumstances presented to the mind. I like that one as well. Okay, so judgment has a negative connotation, but you have to make, if you've ever heard someone say, I have to make a judgment call, what does that mean? When you go into a room, you have to size that room up, understand where you fit and what your actions will be. Kevin, why are we doing this episode?
I don't know. Why are we doing this?
So, from my perspective,
I think you came up with this one.
we were going to do contrast.
Yes.
You came up with the judgment, I think. Or maybe we did together, collectively. But from my perspective, I think we have positive and negative associations with certain words, but I think it's based on a lack of awareness around the positive and negatives of that word. So, for example, is judgment a bad thing? If you're judging someone's intrinsic value based on very little data without actually knowing that person, then yeah, maybe judgment is a bad thing. In that case, it is. But what if Where's a good example, Kev, where you
Yelp.
should make a judgment call? Right. Yelp. Exactly. Okay.
I was thinking that, like, you are judging somebody's restaurant based on the judgments of other people.
Right.
And anytime your decision making is usually a judgment.
Right.
Now, again, like other things, it gets hard when it comes to people.
Right.
Because there's emotions involved. This is another human being. How could you judge them? Now, let's be real, okay? Say whatever, you're a young woman or a young man, and you have two options to date somebody else. One of them is rough around the edges. They have tattoos on their face, maybe, whatever. And
Right.
I don't have anything against that.
Right.
But maybe that's not in alignment with you versus somebody who has a Harvard education, a 6-figure job. They come from a good family. Like, how are you deciphering between what you think a better option is? You're judging. And it doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
Right.
You're just taking into account some details.
And I often say this. Jim Rohn says you only have one chance at a first impression. He says this. He says people look on the outside. God looks on the inside. So both matter, okay? You have intrinsic value and you have extrinsic perceived value from others. So let's say Kevin and I walk into a room and it's a party where no one knows us. What do they know of us based on the very little? They know that probably we have good work ethic because we are fit, and it takes a lot to be fit. They probably would assume, maybe on some level, that we have confidence because of the way our stature is and different things like that. So every time you walk into a room, whether people are conscious of it or not, they are judging a book by its cover. They are, because that's the only data they have.
Right.
Now, does that mean that you want to put people in a box and then not stay open-minded? No. Be pleasantly surprised. So, like, let's say you looked at someone and your subconscious immediately started to become aware of and extrapolate conclusions based on that person's appearance. I guess you just have to stay hyper-conscious of that process so that you're not putting them in a box of, oh, that person must be this because of this. You just have to be careful of what conclusions you're drawing and keep an open mind, in my opinion.
I think judgment becomes a bad thing if it's the stop.
Right.
If you see something, or if you say you see somebody at a party, you judge them based on... Because that's the thing, like, even in the example I used, maybe somebody... Let's just picture, like, your dream person versus somebody that you would never talk to. You would never talk to them because that is the judgment you're putting on them.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. I don't think judgment is a bad thing unless it stops you from being empathetic, unless it stops you from being willing to have a conversation.
To get to know the inside.
Yeah.
You
And
have
I
to
think,
be willing to get to know the
right.
inside.
We
Yeah.
are walking, talking billboards,
Right.
and the first thing that people see is your presentation, and that is what they will judge. And I know a lot of people are afraid of judgment. I am, for sure. Like, I'm afraid of judgment, but you get judged every single day when you show up. Like,
Right.
you genuinely do, and you judge other people as well. As hard as you try not to,
Right.
the only thing you have to base somebody's... Like, the feeling you get when you're around somebody, that's a little bit of a judgment.
Right.
And I think it's bad if you use that judgment to put other people down, if you use that judgment to gossip, if you're like, oh, I would never spend time with somebody like that because of this, because they're a janitor, because they work at this job. Like,
Right.
that's what we're talking about here. Don't not take action on it. Go ahead.
I just had a breakthrough.
Here we go.
I usually do when you go off like that. Okay, so let's say there's there's a homeless person on the street.
World-class podcaster.
I say don't judge them intrinsically. Right, some would say.
I'm just going to keep saying it until I get a little bit of respect.
Well, I have a breakthrough. I need this.
No, I know.
I think this is really important. So I used to say this all the time. I don't think you should go up to a homeless person and ask them if they can help you with your finances. Now, that sounds harsh. Okay, it does. Maybe they are good at finances, and maybe they just caught a bad break. I don't know the answer. Here's the same thing with going to a personal trainer who's out of shape. Okay? Here's where you draw the line. Let's say there's a homeless person. Should you judge their intrinsic value based on their outside appearance? No, absolutely not. Go get to know them, understand them. They have a story too. There's no doubt they could probably climb out of that, and maybe they're choosing that. I don't know. Here's my point. Don't go ask for advice, though, because you can't roll the dice and assume they know a lot about finances.
Yeah.
And that's where you draw the line. Discerning in your own life needs to be a thing. And that has to be based on your understandings. I will never forget when Michael Burt came on the show, and he said, success comes down to making good choices, but we can only make choices to the extent of our understandings. In other words, you have to be super aware of the data that you have, but that shouldn't stop you from going to get more data and getting to know that person.
I'm in the exact same place. Like, let's do this. If Alan and I, when we went to Florida, we stayed in a sketchy neighborhood. And when I say sketchy, that means I was judging that neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I kind of am still judging it because I never went and got more data to have facts of it had a higher crime rate, it had a lower medium income range.
Right.
If you are only making judgments on what you see and what you feel versus actually having data to back it up, then that's kind of a judgment. That's kind of a judgment. Okay? So I think I didn't give myself the chance to explore with facts. So as an example, maybe the person with the facial tattoos and the piercings is the best person in the world.
Right.
If you immediately shut down
and
because you're judging them and you're afraid to be judged when you're with them, then you'll never know.
Here's an
facts.
An interesting notion. The example Kevin just gave, so we stayed at an Airbnb that marketed only the inside.
Yes.
And it was beautiful on the inside, but it was in a less than ideal neighborhood.
Yeah.
There was a little, what was it, a haunted carnival?
There was literally like a haunted carnival down the street. Yeah, it was sketchy.
And a judgment call based on very little data would say maybe this isn't a safe neighborhood. That's called being intelligent.
Yeah.
Okay? So you have to do that. But does that mean when you meet someone, you don't at least give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt? Here's the thing. I think most judgments is out of fear, but sometimes that's a good thing. Like back in caveman days, a bush started moving 3 people. One man was curious and went over there without a weapon and got killed.
Got deaded.
Right. One person was too scared, didn't even check it out. The third person prepared, got a sword and a spear, and ate dinner that night. That person is the one who evolved. So you have to understand, you can't just love everyone by default regardless because that's how you are naive and might get hurt, right, in a sketchy neighborhood. Yeah. But you can't fear everything by default and not get more data. So I think judgment's a super misunderstood concept that all of us need to realize. Now, here's the one thing I want to say too. If you do want to serve someone, help someone, climb out of wherever they are, I do know this to be true. You cannot influence someone in a positive way while simultaneously judging them. You have to relate to where they are and empathize with where they are so that they feel connected to you, so then you can help them rise. But it all is contextual.
Ask yourself this question too. How many times have you judged somebody and then learned more about them and they broke the mold of that? I think one of the good things for me is when I used to be a foreman for the construction company I worked for, we worked in schools. I got to meet custodians all the time.
Yeah.
And when I first started, my initial reaction, I definitely judged. For sure, 100%. Right. But as I learned more about these people, and I learned that like a lot of these, most of them were men. So I'll say a couple of the men I got to know had amazing senses of humor, and they were actually quite smart because they cared about the pension.
Right.
They didn't care about the job. They cared about the pension afterwards because you're a town or state employee.
Right.
Now, if I always judged them and said, these people are below me, they don't know what they're doing.
Oh, that's nonsense.
I never would have had the relationships that I had. A lot of these people were amazing.
Right.
And I would hang out with them while I was supposed to be working. But, and I think that that's the thing. Like, if you've ever found yourself judging somebody else, okay, I appreciate you admitting that. I know I have, for sure. I'll be honest, I definitely have. I think we all have, honestly.
Right.
But it takes a bigger person to take a step back, admit that I did judge that person, but then a couple of things. You can regret the fact that you judged them and didn't get a chance to get to know them, or you can take the fact and be aware that I did judge them, but now I can get to know them.
Right.
Because what are the chances my judgment is 100% correct anyway?
No chance.
Am I that damn good?
No chance.
No.
Yeah. So this is a powerful example, and I know Bianca wouldn't mind me saying this. When you and Bianca first met, she hated me. Or didn't hate me. Sorry, it's a strong word.
Classic.
She didn't hate me. She didn't like me. And now she is one of my closest, dearest friends, and we've helped each other grow and evolve so much. And I remember her talking to me about this and getting kind of emotional. And it's interesting because recently she was in a situation with someone who knows both of us, and this other person was negative toward me, and she was so defensive for me. So it's so cool to see how at one point, from an outside perspective with very little data of who I actually am, she was making judgments, and it's a testament to how far she's come in her own personal development to not only not judge people before she knows them because of that, but actually defended me when, and I told her, like, it doesn't bother me at all. Like, honestly, that makes sense because that person I think is very closed-minded. But that's huge. If there's someone in your life right now who you value tremendously, who at one point dude, in high school, you and I didn't like each other.
I was just going to say.
That's a perfect example. Kevin thought I was arrogant, and I thought he was insecure, and we didn't get along, and he hated me. I didn't hate him, but I didn't like that he didn't like me because I like to be liked. But, like, imagine if we didn't overcome that shit.
The thing is, man, the only reason I like you is because I've got to know you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would still not like you if I only judge, like, oh, he's fancy. Like, oh, he lives in this nice house. Oh, he went to WPI. Oh, he worked for these companies. Oh, inside sales.
Right.
But the only reason we like each other is because we removed the judgments and we were willing to dig deeper. The judgment is just the surface.
Right.
And when you dig deeper, you start to find out that maybe some of your judgments were correct. Maybe,
Right.
but I guarantee not all of them were. And if you're only looking at what you're judging and you're only looking at the negative, you'll never see the positive.
Right.
And that's what a judgment can be a lot of times. Oh, I judge that person on the clothes they wore. That means you didn't take a chance to go deeper and
Right.
see, well, tell me about your story. I think that's another thing, man. We get to learn so much about people.
I know.
That it's like, how many times if we quote unquote judge somebody on their profile and then we learn like, oh, this person is completely different.
Right.
So yeah,
Fire.
it's a whole thing.
How many times have we had someone who we thought was wonderful on the surface, and we realized real quick, oh, wow,
Right.
that's not
Right.
what we want to perpetuate. And then the opposite.
Yeah, I think it's very important that you understand that there are definitely some negative judgments, for sure. If you're only judging somebody's value off what they look like, the clothes they wear, the car they drive, the job they have, their level of educational intelligence.
Right.
You know what I mean? I didn't go to college.
Right.
I used to...
What if I judged you for that?
Right.
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 What if I
This-
assumed you weren't smart?
This wouldn't
Then
happen.
this wouldn't have happened.
But there are some times where you do have to, don't walk down that path, that dark path at night.
Right.
You can judge that dark path. But you have to be very careful when it comes to people because people they have these depths to them that other things don't have. Go ahead.
I had another little break.
Be nice if I could talk.
You've
I'm
been
just
talking.
kidding. I'm just
Been
kidding.
hammering. Okay. I had so when
We
Kevin
gotta go
was,
after this.
Yes. I think people's actions tell their character.
Yes.
So instead of judging their appearance, look at their actions.
yes.
Like, let's say at Top Notch Scholars, I watched you go give $100 that you couldn't afford
No, definitely
to
not.
help someone go to school. I would have, instead of judging you with your tattoos or whatever, your muscles, what if I just judged your action and then went, what a good dude?
The problem is some people will judge judge the action based on their first judgment and say, oh, he must know he's a dick, but he's trying to make other people. You know what I mean? There's a
It's
difference.
all hyperconscious.
It's all hyperconsciousness. If you find yourself judging somebody, try to put yourself in their shoes.
right.
Genuinely, try to put yourself in their shoes and imagine what you would be if you were in that position. Does that mean, like, how we've all had bad days?
Oh, yeah.
I've showed up in sweatpants and
Yeah.
not looking my best. Look at me right now. I have a hat on because my hair is brutal.
Yeah.
Right? If you judged me based on this, then you wouldn't have listened to the other 250 episodes. So if you're judging somebody based on what is, you'll never understand what could be. And that is my 10-second blip. What is yours?
I
See
think
what I did there.
my 10-second blip is going to be from, strong work.
Someone
It's going to be from Abraham Lincoln. I was talking to Emilia about this last night. One of my favorite quotes by him is, I've never met a person I didn't learn from, but 99% of the time it's what not to do. Be discerning. There's no one out there you can't learn from. We are all a warning and an example. Even us. We're a warning and an example for certain things. Like, learn from us, figure out where it fits for you, and don't judge people before you really know them unless it's, to keep yourself safe.
Yeah, and it's a conscious practice, just like anything else. It's a habit. You have to make it a habit.
Right.
Because I think your immediate reaction kind of is. You go into the brain and it's just like, oh, this person is this.
Right.
And that's not always true. It's very rarely true. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Up next, you are going to hear us do a Scratching the Surface episode on optimism versus pessimism. I think we're going to talk about realism in there too. but I think that's a good mix of Alan and myself because I consider myself a realist. He is a serial optimist, which gets him good results often and in trouble other times.
Oh, yeah.
And then being a realist, or sometimes I've been a pessimist, it'll get you safe, but sometimes you'll leave a lot on the table. So we're going to talk about that. And
Strong frame.
Not bad, right?
Yeah,
Not
good.
bad. Not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad. Tell me more.
About how well you
Yeah.
did? That was really good.
Thanks, man.
I was impressed.
Thanks. I
Yeah.
need that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get out of here. We hope you enjoyed this. We hope you'll enjoy the next one. And next time you feel like you're judging somebody, ask yourself, how would I feel if I was being judged in this moment? What would people not know about me if they only saw the surface and they didn't dig any deeper?
Fire.
And we will talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.